the idea that you would have gateways between these nets that could handle the protocol translations, that could deal with all the impedance matching of error messages and whatever. And it's all part of what I was looking at the time. And the question was, how do we go from some very general idea like that to something specific that could deal with this? I knew we had to address the devices in a more general way, because the ARPANET lets you address wires on it. So if you had something on a net 3 away, how were you going to specify what that was? So I figured things would have unique identifiers, but I didn't know what they would be at the time. Vint brought detailed knowledge of protocols to the table. He actually came out of the computer science side of the world. That's a part of the world that I hadn't come out of. I came out of the communications side. So we brought different things to the table, but it was a collaboration like no other one that I've ever had in my career, because it just clicked. I mean, we often, just saw eye to eye on everything, and every now and then we wouldn't. And, once that would happen, we'd have this, heated debate, and we'd sort of pretty soon come to the conclusion that the problem was just we had different assumptions about something or other. So together we were able to work out the nature of what this architecture would look like in fairly detailed form, and we wrote it over. We had a lot of meetings on the subject, both at DARPA and at Stanford on the West Coast. And at one point, we then decided we got to get this down on paper, and we got a conference room in the old Cabana Hyatt, which was on El Camino Real, right opposite the old Ricky's Hyatt, and we sat down to just write it, and we wrote it over the course of, I think it was a weekend. And I remember that so vividly because we pretty much had in our heads what this was. It's just a matter of getting it on paper. And so I started to write it out, and I wrote, and it's not that he didn't have it in his head, he just wasn't sure where to start, I guess. And so I wrote out the first 8 or 9 pages, then he said, okay, give it back to me, and so he took it and he wrote the next 20 or 30 pages, and then we went back and edited and reiterated, and that's what produced that very first draft.
We've got this paper. By this time, it's September of 1973, and there's an opportunity to present the ideas before what was called the International Network Working Group.
Which was meeting in Sussex, England, in late in September, or sometime in September of that year. So I go over there, Vint arrives a few days late with the box of the papers that his secretary has now managed to type up, minus the originals, and we present the material at this working group meeting. The reaction of the people there was, I think, muted relative to what it should have been at the time. Gave the presentation, people said, yeah, very nice, and that was sort of it. We went back later, revised the paper in cosmetic ways mainly, so it would be suitable for publication, and the IEEE Transactions on Communication published it in May of 1974. We were later told, to our great surprise, that it's one of the more valued historical papers